Presented by Ajit Kumar Nair, psychologist from Nair's Epigenetic Wellness, providing online and offline support and guidance. Contact 9446-467-779. We live in a society that constantly looks for the next upgrade. We curate our social feeds to look spotless, we buy a new smartphone every year, and we search for life hacks to streamline our routines to run like a well-oiled machine. But that perfectionist mindset rarely stays contained to our devices or our schedules. It quietly leaks into our personal lives, leading us to draft unspoken rubrics for exactly how our partners, friends, and family members ought to act, speak, and think. Viewing life as a continuous series of upgrades sets a psychological trap. When you apply a software update mentality to human beings, their inevitable, natural flaws don't look like normal variations of personality. They look like system failures. Everyone enters a relationship carrying a unique set of baggage. One partner might be chronically forgetful. A close friend might get overly anxious under stress. A family member might have a stubborn streak that rivals a mule. The reflex response to these traits is usually friction. We tend to assume that if we just poach, nudge, or criticize someone enough, we can smooth out those rough edges. Trying to fix someone sends a clear message that who they currently are is insufficient. It creates an undercurrent of conditional warmth, establishing the feeling that love has to be earned through performance rather than granted through presence. Clinging to an idealized image of who someone ought to be means you aren't actually relating to the person standing in front of you. You are in a relationship with a phantom. Treating the people you care about as self-improvement projects ultimately destroys psychological intimacy, leaving them feeling inadequate instead of loved. The clinical antidote to our cultural optimization trap is a practice called radical acceptance. It requires laying down the blueprint of the ideal human and engaging with the reality of the actual one. But embracing flaws does not mean passive endurance. Acceptance is not synonymous with blind tolerance, nor does it mean remaining in a harmful situation. Looking at this logic tree of imperfection, we see a split. On the left are human quirks, like emotional sensitivity or awkward humor. Recognizing these harmless variations requires compassion. On the right, toxic behaviors demand a completely different response: immediate boundary setting and action. Correctly categorizing behavior using this framework ensures that you aren't enduring harm under the guise of being understanding. It provides the necessary foundation for true relational safety. When you consciously choose to accept someone's benign quirks, you trigger 3 simultaneous psychological shifts in the relationship dynamic. First, it builds psychological safety. When flaws aren't weaponized, defensive facades dissolve into an open state. Second, you trigger reciprocal grace. Offering space without judgment encourages the same in return. Third, conflict shifts from personal attacks to mutual problem-solving. Suspending judgment completely rewires the architecture of a relationship. It transitions the connection from a high-stakes performance review into a resilient, collaborative partnership. Transitioning from our natural, critical mindset to a state of radical acceptance takes deliberate, practical effort. The first method is practicing curiosity over criticism. When someone does something annoying, pause before reacting. Ask yourself what underlying fatigue, fear, or background trait might be driving that specific behavior. Next, acknowledge your own blind spots. Humility acts as the greatest antidote to self-righteousness. Remembering that you are also challenging to live with at times keeps your perspective grounded. Finally, focus on the whole picture. A single flaw often lives right next to a strength. A partner who is frustratingly deliberate might also be remarkably reliable. You have to look at the full mosaic, rather than fixating on one broken tile. Practicing these 3 methods daily disarms the drive for optimization. It forces you to separate a moment of weakness from a person's entire identity, creating the necessary space for genuine connection. Navigating conditional love is exhausting, but when you strip away the demand for perfection, the relationship stops being a tightrope walk and becomes a sanctuary. This reveals an interesting paradox about human growth. People do not evolve because they are pressured to change. They grow because they finally feel safe enough to unfold. Relationships thrive because 2 imperfect people refuse to give up on each other. Abandoning the pursuit of the ideal human and choosing instead to embrace the imperfect ones standing right in front of you is the highest expression of love. Thank you for watching. Ajit Kumar Nair, psychologist from Nair's Epigenetic Wellness, providing online and offline support and guidance. Contact 9446 467 779.